All right. Let's see. I'm seeing by the smiles that it looks like all of you were able to see that. Yeah. Except Bradley. Sorry you missed it, but you can check it out on the website. Uh,
Actually, it's interesting that Kunal chose this video because that was one of them I watched.
okay. Um,
So as it's going through, it's like, oh, I see.
uh, I hope you've brushed up on your Hindi. Um, so, Kunal, let's unmute you. So, I don't know where to begin. I want to ask you, like, how you made the film and so on, but maybe we should roll back a little bit and talk about um, how did you get the idea of making videos like this? What kind of started you on this path?
Um, well, first I want to say hello and happy Mother's Day to all. So delighted to see everyone. I don't think I've ever experienced so much positive energy from a computer screen before. So thank you for making that happen for me. How did I get started on making these videos? So my journey after undergrad meanders through a few places of consulting and making money, but it eventually ends up in a middle school science classroom. And I remember several years ago when I was teaching in a school back in India, and there was a chapter on nutrition, and which included all the details on carbohydrates and proteins and package labels. And I remember as a teacher, I was researching material to try and teach my kids. And I was preparing to teach this particular chapter on nutrition over the summer break. And I recall that it took me upwards of 3 to 4 weeks to come up with a very reasonable lesson plan for that chapter, primarily because there was so much misinformation out there about the topic of nutrition. Organically, what you see on Google search results is, use this diet to lose weight. This particular fad has gone away 10 years ago, but there wasn't as much science as I wanted online. And then I realized, wow, if it's going to take this long to create a reasonable lesson plan, and I'm basically going to deliver it inside the classroom in less than 2 to 3 hours of instructional time, then what do I do with that lesson plan? So I turned all of my content into with a Creative Commons license and put it up online for teachers to use as my contribution. And then I realized, wow, it's really hard for people to sort of go through a lengthy document where the context is lacking. So I started making these videos, and with the hope that people would watch them, and I would feel better because my time investment in the lesson plans would perhaps be amplified because I would now be reaching more students. I made a deliberate attempt to hide behind the camera and sort of have a screen share software or a tablet software where I could write stuff down. So mostly my writing was showing and pictures were showing on the video, but my face was hidden behind because I didn't want to show my face to anybody. It was very intimidating. And so that was the genesis of it. And so after I finished teaching and went to grad school and started working for a startup here in the Valley in California, I came across this opportunity where there was an opportunity to make online courses. They call them MOOCs, Massive Online Open Courses, MOOC. And that required me to be in front of camera, and that was an agonizingly painful process for me. I remember being depressed. I feel like I always felt like someone was like hitting me in the stomach. I was constantly doubting myself. What are you doing? This is not your personality. Um, and then I realized that I was reasonable in front of camera, and that I could sort of be emotionally evocative. Um, and so that was a very hard skill to learn. And a few months ago, when all the story sort of came together, where I had an opportunity to move on from that job, the last job, and make these science videos, I merged all of these skills, which is the skill of teaching, making lesson plans, and being in front of camera and making these videos together.
You know, it's fascinating to me, sort of the development of your online personality. That somebody who obviously was not comfortable being and doing this kind of thing in front of people, and you've created this sort of wild and crazy persona who's going to dance in the Bollywood movies. What an interesting thing. You know, another thing that intrigues me. I believe you got a BA in computer science from the University of Texas at Austin, right?
Correct.
And then what made you decide with that degree, you know, and here you are in the US, and you decided to go back to India and teach in a middle school? What led to that?
Well, my story is somewhat similar to a lot of stories back in India and perhaps all around the world. Um, and it basically begins with wanting to go to college to continue the upward economic and social mobility my family was experiencing. So we were never really poor. We always had enough to eat, but we were not rich either. We were just, a street away from a slum. That scared the crap out of me. I never wanted to be the weakest link in my family, and so I checked boxes. I got good grades so I could get to a good college in the United States, and got a degree in computer science because you can get a job after getting a computer science degree. And then I mindlessly worked at a consulting company in DC for 3 years, wanting to make money. And I recall back, I was just not learning during that time. All I was doing was, going through the habit of checking boxes. And it is such a different circumstance to what I'm telling myself and my students now, which is, just keep learning, and that's all that matters. But for 3 years, I was just wanting to make money, and I didn't have the vocabulary for it at that point, but I knew I was miserable. It's just, I've shared this with you and Vishesh and a few other people in the meditation circle, that I am experiencing tremendous joy now in my life. I'm 34 years old, and I just am experiencing what I think is true happiness for the first time in my life. And when I had just graduated out of college and I was working to make money, I was just the opposite of that. I was miserable. I knew it. I would go on these long walks with myself, talking endlessly about what was wrong and how I could solve it. And I could either not figure out what was wrong, or if I could figure it out, I'd never had the courage to alter my life. I knew I wanted to be closer to my parents. I knew I wanted my life to be a little bit bigger than me all the time. To share with this close group of people, the catalyst that happened, that eventually led me to go back home, other than the fact that I was pervasively miserable for several years, is that my girlfriend broke up with me, and I was just I didn't know what to do with myself at that point. And so after I had received the blessing, I can report in hindsight, of that catalyst. I quit my job and I went back home. And started working for a social enterprise, and then an opportunity came along with Google, wherein we were designing a platform for them, and was in a privileged state to be invited to dozens of schools and classrooms across India and in the Los Altos school district here in the United States. I just knew school was a good place for me, and I realized that even though all of the school principals and the teachers were very welcoming, they were also very skeptical of me being able to manifest change. And I understand why, because here is a school principal who has devoted 30 years of his life to making change inside the school, and here is this 20-something kid who wants to make change in a quarter because Google wants him to report it that way. It just doesn't work, and I just had no credibility whatsoever, other than being enthusiastic and passionate. So I quit my job at Google, and I knew at that point that it was important for me to be a teacher. I think for many people, it's a very valid course of action to take, to be an observer of things, to be invited to many different classrooms and see how good teaching and learning happens. But for me, I had to experience it myself. Yeah. So I quit my job, and I was lucky enough to be invited to be a 6th grade science teacher at a school in New Delhi, India. And I taught there for a year, and it was the best year of my life professionally.
Thank you. Yeah. And something you said earlier, I'm thinking about now, that where you described of how much of your time it required to do a single lesson plan, and what happens to all that investment of time and creativity. And what you discovered is that you could leverage that, and you could make that available not only to those kids, but a whole bunch of other kids.